All right, everybody. The Boston Celtics continue their winning ways. Nothing new there. Another 5-game win streak for the Boston Celtics as we approach the final week of the regular season. It is the wild, wild East out here. Nobody wants the 2 seed. Nobody wants to be in the play-in, but nobody wants to climb their way out. We're going to take a look and see what this last week might look like for the rest of the Eastern Conference. And it's March Madness. The women's season just wrapped up before the Celtics game today. We got the men's championship coming up on Monday. We'll give you our thoughts here about March Madness. This is Green with Envy. You know the deal. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, it's your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Celtics, keep it rolling. Doesn't matter who's in, who's out, who's closing. Little less chaotic today than it was on Friday night against the Kings, but the Celtics keep it going. They get another win against the Portland Trailblazers. Here to talk all about that and get into what the hell is going on in the Eastern Conference and talk a little March Madness. We've got my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. Happy Sunday to you, my guy.
Happy Sunday to you, brother. Good day of basketball. The women's game was super fun. Celtics game, I was kind of paying attention. And then
It was a
we
little
had
blasé.
we had the Heat Pacers game, which was really good. I don't know if you caught any of that, but we're
I was
excited to talk
scoreboard
about that
watching.
when we get into the wild, wild East. I'm happy to give you my thoughts on that.
Yeah, man, Eastern Conference is looking hella sketch right now. That's the best way to put it. I don't know what to make of it. Nobody is, and like I said, we're gonna get into the fact that nobody's really playing all that well in the East, other than the Celtics. But let's start with the Celtics today, as we now are officially in the last week of the season. Most likely 2 weeks from the time that we're recording this is when the Celtics will have their first playoff game. I'm going to assume it's going to be on that Sunday, that first weekend, which would be the 21st. And that's likely because with the 1 seed, the Celtics won't know who they're playing until Friday night because of the play-in tournament and results. So the Celtics will likely get a slot sometime on that Sunday. So 2 weeks from today, we should be talking about the first game of the NBA playoffs as the Celtics try to make it back to the finals after falling just short last season and getting there the year before. But taking care of business here in the regular season. Today, they hosted the Portland Trailblazers. So let's get into a morning box score and get you all set up. Celtics win this one at the TD Garden, 124-107. Let's start with the Portland Trailblazers. And Greg, let me ask you these two questions. Before this afternoon, had you ever heard of Rayon Rupert? Not Rupert, Rayon Rupert. I did a little wine and cheese tasting earlier today, so I think I'm well equipped to go ahead and say that name properly. Or Justin Minaya. Had you ever heard of either of those two players before this afternoon?
What about Duop Reith?
I actually had heard of him. I feel like last time we played the Blazers, he made an appearance. So I actually feel like I've heard his name a little bit. But yes, he belongs in this category as well. You're not wrong on that part.
No, man, it's funny watching these teams, like we said coming into this stretch, once the Celtics had kind of wrapped everything up in the East, that we were going to learn a lot about like guys that are kind of just hanging on around the NBA with all these teams that don't really have much to play for going up against the Celtics. And man, this Trailblazers team, when your best option is give the ball to Delano Banton and get the hell out of the way, things haven't quite gone to plan. Although Banton was playing really well for the Blazers tonight, he's a guy that couldn't crack the Celtics rotation,
Right.
gets traded to the Trailblazers, and is literally their number one option.
Yeah, Delano Banton tonight, 11 of 23 from the field, 3 of 9 from three. I saw a stat that with those 3 threes that he hit tonight, they're actually more than the total amount of threes he hit in whatever it was, 40-something games with the Celtics this season. He only hit 2 threes in his short stint with the Celtics, but he had 28 points to go along with 9 assists. Scoot Henderson, only 3 of 13 for him. He had 15 points, and then DeAndre Ayton, 22 points on 23 shots. Not going to lie, that's not great. So, Blazers, thanks for stopping by. Got some work to do here. Real quick on just Banton, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on the Blazers here, but I know Banton was kind of your guy at one point, especially when he was on the Raptors. You always had kind of an eye for him. And then when the Celtics got him, you thought there could be A little bit of Banton magic, but obviously there's just not the room on the Celtics team. But you see him getting an opportunity here, and over his last 20-ish games or so, he's got some really nice numbers. Obviously, it's that time of the year where it's like, is this real or a mirage? It's hard to tell depending on, there's a lot of context that needs to be brought into these games. But I'm just curious to get your quick 30-second synopsis here on Delano Banton and whether or not some of what you're seeing might be real.
I definitely think it's real in that this was always his skill set. He's a great pick and roll player. He's got a great feel for that. He was a natural point guard coming out of college. So, a lead ball handler is kind of what he was designed to do. So he's getting that opportunity with the Trailblazers. It's just like in the NBA, his role is never going to be lead ball handler because he's not as good as the 5 guys in the Celtics that he couldn't play over. Right. And like if Celtics fans are watching this game, like, oh, why did we trade Banton? It's like, well, he's not going to play over Peyton Pritchard. He's not going to play over Derek White. He's not going to play over Drew Holiday. He's not going to play over Jaylen Brown. He's not going to play over Jason Tatum. Like all those guys right there are all better than him, better options. So, we kind of did him a favor. I know I'm going over 30 seconds, but I actually did want to talk a little bit about Banton just in case people were wondering if we, watching this game tonight, did we make a mistake selling too soon on Delano Banton? And for this season, no, like Delano Banton was not going to crack the rotation. Even if a guy got hurt, we would figure out a way to plug those holes with those 5 guys that I mentioned before. But long term, if there's a world in which Derek White moves on, if there's a world in which Drew Holiday decides not to come back, all these pieces that the Celtics have right now. If Jaylen Brown is too expensive in the long, and in 2 years from now, like maybe Delano Banton could have been some guy to fill up some of those minutes and get some lead ball handling. But I'm happy for the kid, man. I always liked him on Toronto. I was excited that we got him in the offseason, as you said. So it's good to see him finally getting an opportunity to thrive. I'm like having a Mike Gorman moment right now. My voice just
oh my God. We're into the last week of Mike Gorman, and someone get my guy a cough drop. Jesus, my poor Mike. I mean, hey, talk about trying to get to the finish line here. I thought we were going to lose Mike halfway through the game. I thought Drew Carter was just going to come out of the stands, be like, Mike, I got this one.
Yeah,
we'll bring it back in next week. Want to make sure he's nice and rested for his last couple of games. But shout out to Mike for fighting through that one today. Definitely took one for the team. But yeah, Delano Banton, good for him getting the opportunity. We kind of seen the same thing with Lamar Stevens at times in Memphis as well. Being able to just get an opportunity. And sometimes that's all this league is. It's just the right opportunity at the right time. So we'll have to see how that momentum works for Banton, but that's a different topic for a different year, to be quite honest. So let's get back to this game here. Let's take a look at the Celtics side of things here. They had 6 guys in double figures, nearly 7 as Xavier Tillman finished with 9 points. But let's start with Jaylen Brown, who was pretty efficient in this game, 10 of 17, 3 of 5 from the 3-point line. He had 26 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block. Kristaps Porzingis, 12 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, and 5 blocks, really filling up the stat sheet. Derek White, 15 points and 9 assists. Drew Holiday added in 12 points, 2 of 3 from 3-point range. And then off the bench, Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser doing their best. Peyton Pritchard, 9 of 13, 20 points, 8 assists. And Sam Hauser bouncing back from that 1 for 18 against the Kings with a nice 4 for 6 output here. 10 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists. Celtics win this one easily, 124-107. And Greg, at the end of each of these games over the next week, most importantly, seems like nobody's hurt. Jaylen Brown played today. No Jason Tatum tonight. Jaylen Brown plays, and unlike, I can't remember the last game he played, but I know he sat out the Kings game, but the game before that, or the Thunder game is what it was actually, where it looked like, man, maybe that wrist is bothering him a little bit. Seemed to be fine today. Mm-hmm. So now I'm a little bit more on board with the Jaylen Brown, Joe Mazzulla tandem message of nothing to see here. We're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that the Celtics at least have a system right now, is that they're playing their guys normal rotation minutes up until the 4th quarter. And It seems like they're not going to play anybody in the 4th quarter. And what it seems like they're doing is they're just utilizing these games as practice, right? So maybe they don't have to go quite as hard in practice because they have set things. They have an itinerary for what they want to work on in these games. It does seem like they're really focusing on their half court execution. They're trying out some defensive looks. They're trying out some different rotations. Guys seem to be willing to take some shots that maybe they wouldn't take in a really important game, like just like getting into the mid range. Derek White, like
Mhm.
doing a little bit more work at the elbows and with the floater and little things like that I think are standing out right now. But watching the team, when Jaylen Brown threw that alley oop to Kristaps Porzingis in transition, I was like, what are we doing? Why are we
Yeah.
even risking plays like that right now? Like, I know you
Same
guys.
thing when Kristaps went for that loose ball
Oh
and
my
and
God,
and went up
man.
into, I can't remember who it was, but even Scal in the broadcast was like, "I just held my breath for a second."
Yeah,
Like,
like there's just
"Guys,
no
let that go.
need,
It's not worth it."
no need to be doing any of these crazy plays. Um, and I know they probably feel invincible as professional athletes at like the tip top shape, but I
Right.
just don't want them to take any unnecessary
They're not
risk.
as porcelain as the rest of us humans out here
Right.
trying to scratch by on one rec game a week and still be able to have a semblance of a healthy lifestyle afterwards.
Another play that stood out to me, that one play where Sam Hauser got the ball in transition and threw an alley oop to Jaylen Brown, where
Mhm.
Jaylen was unable to finish. In traffic, I'm just like, "Oh, what do
Yeah.
we like, let's just keep it simple." I'm okay if the Celtics for the next 3 games or 4 games, whatever's left now, is that we just go like 1 half, just play the
Yeah.
first half with the starters. Like, I get they wanna work on some stuff, but health is paramount right now, and, I'm just more than happy to see them get through another game completely healthy. Vibes are still good. Xavier Tillman's balling. Do we wanna talk about the game from the other night?
I
We didn't
mean
get to
I mean,
touch on it.
talking about the Kings game, right? Just how
Yeah.
how chaotic it got. I mean, honestly, I stopped watching towards the end of the game when I thought that everything was well in hand, and then all of a sudden, I was out grabbing some food, and I checked my phone, and I had some text messages from our friends, the Sucker Celtics group chat that we're in, talking about how crazy this game had gotten out of hand. I was like, "What are you guys talking about?" And I happened to pull up my phone. It was 101 to 100 just as the game had ended. And I was like, we were up by 20 when I stepped out to go pick up my food. And now I'm coming back. And like, what the hell happened in this
Well,
game?
the Trailblazers, the Kings had something to play for, and they had De'Aaron Fox,
Yeah.
who went off in the fourth quarter. He's like, "You're really not going to put your starters back in? All right, I'm gonna go crazy and bring us back." This game, it's us going
And they
up against.
desperately needed it and still didn't get it.
Yeah, the game tonight. The last 5 for the Celtics was better than every single player on the court was better than what the
Right.
Trailblazers had out there. Like Scoot Henderson, good lord, man, he
What do you
doesn't look.
what do you feel about Scoot Henderson? Because we saw Brandon Miller last week, and you and I talked about him a
Mhm.
little bit, and it's like I can see where this is going, and I like where this is heading. He's a rookie, but I can see the Paul Georginess, the Brandon Ingramness of his game.
Mhm.
I was trying to find some moments today where I was like, okay, this is what I can see Scoot. Like it's raw, but I see it. And I couldn't really find
Well,
too
he
much. I mean, I and the thing I thought about was remember last year they did the Vegas showcase with him and
Mhm.
Wemby. I
Yeah.
loved Scoot in that. I loved I loved the way he played. I loved just like his attitude and the way that he was like, yeah, this is Wemby's night, but like don't forget about me. I'm the at the time he was thought to be the number 2 pick. I mean, ended up number 3, didn't fall very far. But yeah, I didn't really know what to make of Scoot tonight.
He's got good court vision. I'll give him that. Like he had 8 assists tonight. He does a really
Goggles.
good job coming off a pick and roll and seeing the skip pass to the corner. He's good at that one-handed right hand pass all the way to the corner when he sees the low man slide over to take away the roll. So he does have that pass, which is something, as we saw with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Like it takes years to develop, feel in the pick and roll. So I think
Yeah,
Scoot Henderson already runs a decent pick and roll. I think it's good for him to be getting these reps right now with DeAndre Ayton. I think he needs to eventually get the reps with the guys that matter for that team to see if he actually fits in Portland or if they or you know what, it just makes more sense to have Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, DeAndre Ayton, and insert.
Jeremy Grant, Rob.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're missing everybody right now. I feel
Yeah,
so bad. But yeah, with Scoot, it's gonna take a few years. Like, it's tough to come in as a point guard and just completely dominate in the NBA. He
yeah.
doesn't have elite athleticism. He's got a great, like, athletic body, but he doesn't have the explosiveness of, like, a Derrick Rose, who he's kind of built like,
hmm
but he doesn't explode off the floor like him. Like, that one play at the end of the game where Svi fouled
What do you?
him and
I thought he was
his
gonna
head
crack his head
dude,
open.
his head hit the ground. It bounced off the floor,
Yeah,
and he just got up like it didn't. I don't know if it's like the fro is, like, is that
little
special,
little
but
safety landing, little padding
yeah,
there
but
for him,
dude,
but.
No, I
Yeah,
mean, I think if you're a Trailblazers fan, you have to be patient with Scoot because you invested a number 3 pick in a good draft on him. So we'll see,
yeah, you
man.
need time.
I
Like
think
I wouldn't be out on Scoop by any means. I
no,
just
no.
tonight I just didn't think that there was a ton to lean onto. But it is funny with his coach being obviously Chauncey Billups, and they talked on the broadcast a little bit about how Chauncey was the Celtics' number 3 pick in 1997. Celtics traded him the first year, which, thinking back on it as Abby was going through kind of the timeline and like talking to Chauncey about why, like how he felt and like why it happened. And, Rick Pitino's reasoning being we really need to make the playoffs right now. And I think Kenny Anderson's like the guy to do it. Think about how fucking insane that is to trade your number 3 pick halfway through his rookie season to make the playoffs with Kenny Anderson. And like, it just imagine if that trade happened today. Imagine if they traded Scoot for, I'm trying to think of who would be the equivalent of Kenny Anderson
Mike
in the
Conley,
NBA today. Who would you say?
Mike Conley,
Maybe like Mike Conley or like a Spencer Dinwiddie or something. I don't know, something to that effect. Because you're like, I think we might make the 8 seed this
right?
year. Like that's insane. Like that's so crazy that was. And I know it definitely got. And it took Chauncey a while to get to the Chauncey Billups that is now in the Hall of Fame. Shout out to you, Chauncey, getting introduced into the Hall of Fame that was on the Pistons and was on the the Nuggets. But just to make that move and then to repeat that move with Joe Johnson like 4 years later, it's thank God Danny Ainge
People
came in and
really
righted the
didn't
ship.
know, dude. People didn't know how to run a team back then.
Like insane. Like how could you give up? Like Joe Johnson was awesome his rookie year. I remember being like, all right, we got Joe Johnson, Pierce, and Antoine. Like let's make this happen. And we got Tony Delk and Rodney Rogers to
Yeah.
make a run at an Eastern I mean, granted, they got to the conference finals and got 2 games from the finals, but like definitely not worth it, guys. That was just a very, very short-sighted move. So yeah, I think if you're Portland, it's year one, is what it is. Don't have a ton of guys that have been healthy anyways. Like Rob's been out the whole year, Brogdon in and out, all so on and so forth. But yeah, so Celtics get the win against the
Hey,
Blazers.
we did 17 minutes on a Celtics Blazers game.
I'm proud of us. That took a lot. That took a lot. Let's go to our second topic today. Let's jump into the wild, wild East, minus the Celtics, of course. The Celtics we've known for a long time where the Celtics are going to be. They're going to be, of course, that number 1 seed in the East, number 1 overall seed in the NBA. But seeds 2 through 8, it is a mess. And right now, as we're recording, the Knicks and Bucks are playing. So we don't know how that game's going to end. As I'm speaking, it is 61-54. Bucks lead over the Knicks. And that will, if the Bucks can win that game, they should basically put themselves in a pretty secure position to go ahead and wrap up that number 2 seed. But if they lose, this is going to get even tighter and messier than it already is. So as we're recording, Bucks and Knicks are going at it. If the Knicks win, they'll pull within a game of the Bucks. The Magic are now the 3 seed. The Orlando Magic are now the 3 seed as we're speaking. The Cleveland Cavaliers, who lost to the Clippers earlier today, they're the 5 seed. I will say Orlando, New York, and Cleveland, as we speak, all with identical records with the Knicks playing right now. And then the Pacers, who I know is a game that you were checking in on today, they had a huge win over the Heat, which now puts them a game and a half ahead of both the Heat and the Sixers, who are tied at both 43 and 35 in that 7-8 spot, trying to avoid the play-in, but now a game and a half back of Indiana, who does hold the tiebreaker with both of those teams. So really, depending on what happens in this Knicks Bucks game, just complete chaos. 2 through 8. Maybe the Pacers put enough space between them, but with a week left, each team 3 to 4 games to play, you have one bad week, another team has one good week, and this shifts again very, very dramatically. So, Greg, tell me a little bit about what you saw in that Pacers Heat game, because I know you said you had a few thoughts on it.
Yeah, I caught the last 5 minutes of the game. Pacers were up, I think, like 8 points or so at that point. It was in
As I
Indiana.
was box score watching, they were up at seemingly about 8 to 10 most of the game, and then I saw it obviously ended up as a 117-115 Indiana win.
Right. And I think like over the last, I don't know, 4.5, 5 minutes of the game, I think there was like one stop between the
Mm-hmm.
2 teams. Both teams were just scoring at will on each other, and I think that was the thing that kinda stood out to me because it seems like we're probably gonna end up playing either Philly or Miami after that. I think there was a chance if Miami had beaten Indiana, they would have jumped them, and then I would imagine have hung on. But Miami didn't really look great, man. They didn't really know like
Hero
what
was
their
back for this
offense
game, by the
was.
way.
Yeah,
That's
there's a lot of Tyler Hero down the stretch. Nikola Jovic was very
mhm.
involved in their late game offense. He was
He's
on the
been playing a
court.
lot. He's been starting for them over the last I don't know how many games, but 10 to 15 games or so.
Right. He's on the court. Don't really know what their defense is when it's Jovic, Bam, Martin, Butler, and Hero. Like I feel like there are a couple people there that you can kind of exploit. Indiana was just attacking at will. They got the Heat in rotation whenever they wanted. Neesmith had a couple of nice plays. Siakam had a couple of nice plays. And anytime Miami was in rotation, it seemed like Indiana was driving the basket and getting in ones. Like
Yeah.
that was Indiana's offense down the stretch. And Miami just like gave the ball to Tyler Hero and said shoot some Hail Mary threes, and he was able to bring them back. And at the end of the game, I think it was like maybe a one or a 2-point game. I think it was a 2-point game. Miles Turner had the ball at the top, and Bam stripped him, and they ended up calling Bam for a foul to send Turner to the line. He hit both free throws. It pretty much sealed it. But
Yeah.
if you know if they don't, because it was a clean strip, then Miami just didn't have a challenge. So who knows? But I think watching that game, if Miami can't beat the Pacers in a must-win game, like I don't know if I can even take them seriously anymore, man. Like I know the Pacers are a decent squad, but
Yeah.
like all
I
the
mean, this is
talk
0
about
for
them,
2. This is 0 for 2 Miami this week in must-win games.
yeah,
They lost to Philadelphia earlier this week, and then again with Indiana. And the thing that so I was thinking about this earlier, right? Because I'm with you. All the signs are there that all right, it's not the same Miami Heat, but think about last year. They were the 7 seed. They lost to the Hawks in the first play-in game and
right,
then very nearly lost the 8-9 game to the Bulls. That came down to the last couple seconds. So I'm right there with you again about feeling like we should write off the Heat. But then again, it wasn't as if they came in to the play-in or the playoffs last year with any momentum. If anything, they had negative momentum despite pulling one out against a Bulls team that was, several games under 500 that took them to the brink. Like,
yeah.
so I just
And
don't.
let's be
They're
real.
just weird.
If Giannis doesn't get hurt in that series, they probably don't beat the Bucks, right? Giannis was compromised from game one.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a part of this for sure. But I do feel like obviously injuries happen everywhere. So I mean, Celtics were a victim of that in Game 7, but put themselves in their own hole. So it's tough to say. But yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. But it feels like it's going to be Miami and Philly in some
Right.
order in that 7-8.
In
So
Philly, so Embiid's not playing tonight as
against
of time
Wemby.
of recording right now. Spurs are up 74-69 on the Embiid-less Sixers. So there is still a chance for the Sixers, if they just win out, that they might be able to catch Indiana. I'm not sure if they have the tiebreaker or not. I'm pretty sure they do, but if they,
Indiana has the tiebreaker on Philly.
oh, they do? Okay.
Yeah.
So they would need to jump them. So Indy would need to lose, what, 3 more games?
Yeah, let's take a look at the Pacers schedule here. I mean, basically, for anything to change, like I said,
2
that
more
that was a
games.
huge
Indy would need to
win for
lose
the
2 more
Pacers.
games if Philly wins out.
Yeah, something like that, I believe. Let me see here who they
Yeah.
got to wrap up here. So, yeah, I mean, here's the Pacers schedule for this week. They only got 3 games left. They play the Raptors on Tuesday, the Cavs on Friday, and then the Hawks on Sunday. And I think the Hawks are locked into that 10 seed. I don't believe they might be able to catch the Bulls, but it's a long shot. They'll kind of know where they are by that time. And I don't really know what the update is with Trae Young at this point, whether or not he's coming back. Although they've played somewhat better without Trae Young. I mean, they're over 500 in that time frame. But the thing that I look at the most, Greg, just in general across the East, is so like the Celtics are 8-2 in their last 10. You could extrapolate that even further, and we know how great the Celtics have been. The only other team that feels like they're playing either anything above average. Every other team is basically Bucks in their last 10, 4-6, Magic 6-4, Knicks 5-5, Cavs 3-7, Pacers 7-3, Heat 6-4, 5-5 for the Sixers, 5-5 for the Bulls, 6-4 for the Hawks. Just a lot of like average to below average from almost every
Sixers have
Eastern
won 4 in a
Conference
row.
team. Sixers, that's true. Sixers have won 4 in a row. That's good to point out because that is, yeah, that's now with I think Embiid back for at least 3 of those, I believe, 2 or 3. Although without him in that game, like you just mentioned right now, shout out to my guy Wemby carrying my fantasy team here, 20 points and 11 rebounds to go with 4 blocks. Thank you, Wemby. But yeah, no, the Sixers are the team that I think is coming, and that's probably the team right now. And I'll be honest, from a Celtics point of view, still not worried. I'm not, but if I had my choice, I'd rather not deal with Embiid and deal with the Sixers because I do think the ceiling of the potential teams from Indiana down to Atlanta, obviously the Sixers have the highest ceiling out of those 5 teams. So that would clearly be the choice not to play in the first round, but looks like it's probably going to be them or Miami is more than likely at this point Boston's first round opponent.
It's really good for the Pacers that they're probably going to stay out of the play-in because I think
Yeah.
I think for them, having been in the in-season tournament championship, had those big moments earlier in the season, to see them continue to hold up at least some level of what they were before Halliburton's injury, before the Buddy Hield trade. They're playing better basketball of late. And it's nice to see like the new younger teams kind of start kicking out the old guard, like the
Right.
Miami Heat, get
Well,
the
well,
hell
think
out of
about
here.
this, Greg. If things hold, Pacers Magic right now, just as
That's
we're
fun.
recording, that's a fun series. A complete, styles make fights.
Mhm.
Complete contrast of styles to which they play. Magic all in on defense. Pacers all in on offense. Who do you think you'd like in that series? I'm just curious.
I think the Magic. I think the Magic's
Uh,
physicality would win out. But you know what? I was just thinking as you were talking, it's kind of like not a bad spot to be the 3 seed because you know which team you're playing and you have like a whole week to prepare for them versus
yeah, I
being a 1
mean,
or a 2 seed where you don't know who you have to prepare for. I
right.
never really thought about how much of a disadvantage that
I've
is.
heard people bring that up before because that's why it's great to be the 1 seed, but you like I said, we won't know until Friday night who they're playing on, Sunday at 3:30, right? So you're not gonna know until Friday at 9, 10 p.m., and then you've got a day and a half to start preparing, and if that ends up being Philadelphia or Miami, like, that's no slouch, right? Like you have to prepare for either Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo to come to town or Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid plus all their other, all the other pieces they have. But basically, there's 4 All-Stars that have the potential to come to Boston for game 1, and you're gonna have a day and a half to prepare. Whereas if it holds, you might be the Magic preparing for the Pacers, and you got 6, 7 days from when your season ends on Sunday until playing probably in that Saturday game. So it's interesting because the play-in tournament I think has been a success. I think for me more so than the actual play-in games, which they're fine. They're I could take them or leave them, but I do think that the emphasis it puts on getting to the 6 makes the regular season better. And I think for me that's the most important part of what the play-in
Yeah,
tournament
I
has
like
done.
playing.
I don't mind the games themselves. I think it's important though that it makes the regular season better. That's the part of the play-in tournament that I like, especially when you get younger teams in those play-in games. Those are a lot
Mhm.
of fun. But yeah, it's dude, it's crazy here. Let's go out of the play-in for a minute here. And like we said, we don't the Bucks, if they win today, are going to really kind of hold on to that 2 seed. Then it becomes Magic, Knicks, Cavs, and Pacers only a game back of that trio right there.
Mhm.
3 through 6, man. That's going to be a really interesting spot. So if we're looking like the 4-5 matchup is going to be looking forward here for the Celtics would be the important seeding breakdown. So if we got the Magic, Knicks, Cavs, and Pacers, who are you hoping lands in that 4-5 matchup?
I like where it's at right now, Knicks and Cavs. I think the
Yeah.
moment Randall went down and Anunoby, we just don't know if he's going to play. I think the Knicks needed to be healthy to be able to give the Celtics a push. And the Pacers have played us tough this year, man. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to see Aaron Nesmith in 7 games, just trying to
And we
take
know the
those
Magic have
ACLs
given
out.
us trouble. We don't want to see
Right.
Jonathan Isaac on the Jays, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to see that
I
level
kind of
of
like where it is right now, to be honest with you, man. I'm okay with where it is right now. And knowing that the Bucks and either the Heat or the Sixers, one of those 3 teams is gonna be taken out in the first
right.
round. And then, ideally, the Sixers get to the 6th seed, but I just don't think that's possible right now with the
Yeah.
Pacers having beaten the Heat today. So, I do think the Knicks and the Cavs are the 2 teams, especially the Cavs just playing like absolute dog shit right now. They might even fall to the 6th seed, man. The Pacers
Yeah,
might
they
jump
absolutely
them and
could.
catch them. So,
Yeah,
um,
they have I think they have a game later this week, I
Knicks
think,
Pacers
actually.
could be
Yes,
a fun
that's a
series.
huge game on Friday night, actually, Pacers Cavs. So that could
Okay,
determine,
nice.
wherever they're at seeding wise at that point. But it is kind of funny, right? Because I think, and let me know if I'm speaking for you here, but Bucks, Heat, Sixers, I think would be the realest threats to take down the Celtics. And it's
Mhm.
funny because, like you said, the Bucks are going to have to probably play one of them in the first round. We're going to have to take out the other one. So there's only going to be one remaining by the time that we get to the second round for the Celtics to have to worry about if things go according to plan. But those feel like, in my opinion, probably the three scariest teams for the Celtics to play in the
And
Eastern
then
Conference.
and then the Bucks and Magic, so they're gonna knock each other off, and we'll see who's
Play
left.
real physical, and yeah, we'll see who comes out. I mean, Bucks have been Dame was banged up earlier this week. Middleton's always been banged up, and that's been kind of the X factor that we talked about. So, yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see how this shakes out over the next week. I'm sure as we record in the middle of the week, we'll have some updates here. We'll see what things are looking like and see if we can start to predict a little bit more who the Celtics might be playing and what that play-in may shape up and look like. But Greg, let's transition here a little bit before we wrap up this show. And March Madness is coming to its culmination here on both the men's and women's side. We talked at the top. The women's game was a really fun game today. South Carolina and Iowa for the championship today. South Carolina finishing off an undefeated season, 87-75. Something I didn't know because I'll be honest, I don't watch as much women's college basketball, but obviously with Caitlin Clark been locked in a little bit more towards the end of last year, been checking in a little bit more this year. I didn't realize South Carolina has lost one game in 3 years, and that was to Caitlin Clark in the Final Four last year. That's some crazy shit right there. So let's start with the women's game for a little bit. We can talk about the men's final coming up and any thoughts we have on that. But I'm assuming you watched most of this game today, right?
Yeah, man. I thought the women's game. I think what stood out to me was the level of athleticism on the South Carolina squad.
Yeah.
They had some real athletes, man. Um, like the one girl coming off the bench, Full Wiley. I know she kind of
Hmm.
went viral early in the year for some of her like transition layups and like her ability to kind of Kyrie bag at the rim. They talked about she's small and they talked
She was
about
a
on the
freshman too,
broadcast.
I think.
Yeah, she's a freshman.
Yeah.
They talked about, on the broadcast how she can dunk a ball, and she's like 5'8". So she
That's
got,
crazy.
like, crazy hops. They had a bunch of, girls on the squad that looked like they were, 6'2", 6'3", really athletic, long arms, bunch of shooters. The girl Pow Pow was
Hmm.
knocked down. Tessa Johnson, like, during the game, I was like, "Oh, this Tessa Johnson girl is, like, really good." I don't really know much about her. Found
Yeah.
out she was a freshman. Um, just, like, unbelievable shooter, unbelievable overall, just like cohesion amongst that team and their defensive intensity throughout the game was
Yeah.
really impressive. I was really impressed with that team, man. It's no wonder that they were undefeated. I know they lost their entire starting five coming into this year, but they
Oh, did they?
replaced, yeah, and they had the on I think it was the number one pick in the draft last year, Aaliyah Boston. She was a rookie of the year in the WNBA, so she's actually on the Indiana team, I believe, that is going to
That's
draft
gonna
Caitlin
get
Clark
Caitlin
as
Clark.
number one.
Damn.
Yeah, so that'll be fun, and it's just really cool. I know we talked about this a little bit on the last pod about how much this has kind of raised the awareness of the level to which women's basketball has kind of gotten. It's not just like a couple players. There's
Hmm.
players all over the court that just make you
Yeah.
like raise your eyebrows, like holy shit, like that girl can hoop.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
from, like, the little bit of, like, women's basketball I've watched in the past, and it was just like, kinda like, "Okay, I think this is honestly, all these girls were way better than I am," but, like, I'm just wasn't entertained. It wasn't entertained enough to, like, keep watching, and watching what I have over these last couple weeks, like, damn, like, it's not every single, girl out there, but, like, there's some moves out there that I'm like, "Oh, this is different." Like,
oh yeah, I
this
mean
you know what I
you can
mean?
tell
Like, you can
they've
see
been
the
like,
evolution.
oh my god. And there's still like the girls that, like the kind of bigger girls. There was that one girl on I think O'Grady on the Iowa team where
Oh,
like
she
kind
dropped,
of
like, 40 in the first round or something, or
did she?
I
I don't
think
know.
so. There was a girl in Iowa State that dropped 40 in the first
No, no,
round
no,
of
no,
the
no. I'm talking about
WNBA.
on Iowa on Caitlin
Oh,
Clark's team.
okay,
Yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
yeah.
No, the kind of big blonde girl on the team where she was just like
Mhm.
super clumsy, didn't look like she belonged on the court, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. especially going up against that Cardosa.
Yeah, I mean, she was. Well, we'll talk about the men's here in a second, but she basically ED'd them like on the
Yeah.
boards,
Oh my
which is
gosh.
kind
Yeah.
of what Edie did to NC State last night.
Right. And so there are a couple girls that still you just like, oh, like she's not very good. But for the most part, I felt like every single like Kate Martin, I think
Mhm.
that's her name, Kate Martin for
Yeah,
Iowa, like the
she
other
was
kind
good.
of
Yeah,
swing player. She's really good. I thought that girl, what's the point guard's name for Iowa? Little girl.
I'll have to pull up
Gabby
there.
Marshall, maybe.
That might be it.
Yeah, but she impressed me, man. Like super heady player, like super gritty. Made that great play at half court where it looked like the game was
The
about to
hustle
be
play.
over. The
Yeah.
hustle play at half court, like she was all over the place. I thought they should have gotten her some more shots, to be honest with you. And then Caitlin Clark was really good, but the athleticism that she was going up against on South Carolina, like some of those girls were just like hounding her with long
Yeah.
arms and
Like,
length
I
and
thought LSU was athletic when I watched that game. What was that, last week or earlier
right.
this week against Iowa? And I was surprised that I thought at one point LSU was gonna out athletic Iowa in that game, and I was obviously able to,
Mhm.
stave that off. It helped that Angel Reese, like, rolled her ankle and just didn't really seem kind of the same after that.
Yeah,
But in the South Carolina game, it just felt overpowering at a certain point,
right.
especially towards the end of that first half when I can't remember who it was that stripped Caitlin Clark at half
Mhm.
court. And I think it was like I think Iowa was up like 44-42, and then it was like a real quick 7-0 run right before the half. And it was like, oh man, that happened way too quickly. And then it felt like South Carolina just never lost momentum. But overall, just honestly, really fun game. Probably been the better tournament than even the men's. And
The
the
men's
men's have been
tournament's
pretty solid
been
too.
good. Yeah, men's
It's
tournament's
been a
been
good
pretty
one.
good, but the women's tournament just it's been another level, and I'm excited to see, like people returning next year for the women's tournament. I'm really excited to see the people from South Carolina that come back. I'm
Mhm.
excited to see Juju, that
Yeah,
Von
Juju's
Lith
good, man. I
girl.
liked watching her. Juju had a very I don't want this to come off wrong, but she had a very men's-like game to her. Like, the way that
Mhm.
she played, like, it looked like I was watching, like, a men's game with some of the way that she moved, like, it felt very much like watching either an NCAA men's game or watching some type of pro game.
Yeah, yeah. I was interested when Tony Allen was talking about how like Caitlin Clark couldn't get a bucket on him. I wonder what he would say about Juju.
Right. Right, because I feel like she play and she's big enough too, like, I think she's like
Mhm.
a 6'3"
6'2",
maybe
6'3", yeah.
yeah, something of that effect, so I think she'll be really interesting to watch going forward, and yeah, I think, that's the biggest thing for me is, like, I used to love watching college basketball. I don't really watch it much anymore until we get to the tournament. I mostly watch it for draft prospects, but part of it's just like I just don't have the time to know who's on what team anymore, and like it's
Mhm,
gonna change. And with the portal, there's constantly people switching, and like that's great if you're into it, but it's just like I can't keep up with all of that. So it's been harder to be as invested. And then I hate all the conference realignment and stuff. Like I used to love the Big East. That was so
mhm.
cool. And now
Yeah.
I think we're getting down to the point where we have three super conferences starting next year, and maybe they're going to dissolve that. I don't know. It's all football related. So it's tough to follow, but switching over to the men's side, it is still kind of cool to get now a better idea of like, who are the top prospects. And then also because we're getting to the NBA playoffs, it's starting to be like, all right, what would this guy look like in a scenario, playing for the Celtics or playing for the Magic or whoever it might
Mhm.
be. And so I think when you get to Monday night now and you have these two big guys going at it, and I've watched a little bit more of actually probably Edie than I have Klingon at UConn. But with Edie, he's so big, and I know our guy Adam has written about this, but Luke Cornett feels like that's got to be around Edie's floor, right? Being, I mean, he's thicker than Luke Cornett, probably a little bit more aggressive than Luke Cornett. Although we've seen Luke get aggressive at times, so
I
I
think
don't want
he's
to
more
besmirch Luke.
I don't remember what Luke looked like in college, to be honest with you, but I think Edie's a little bit more lumbering than Luke is now,
Hmm.
for sure. Like he's not very nimble, doesn't move his hips well. He doesn't get up and down the court well either. It obviously it's kind of like that Kendrick Perkins way
Right.
of running up and down the court where
He
like
does. I will say
every
this though. He does have great stamina. He's been basically playing 40 minutes
right.
the last two games. So that was one of the things against it was a cool story with NC State. the kid DJ Burns. I always love when a fat guy does well. Like that's just fun, right? That's just everyone wants to root for that guy to surprise you. But
Mhm.
he just, I mean, he couldn't keep up. That the DJ was gassed,
Right.
and and Edie didn't come off the court for the last 2 games.
Yeah, no, I think his cardio is great, but it just in his ability to get up and down the court and, like,
Yeah,
change ends of the court, he doesn't do that gracefully, like, they have to
for sure.
play at a very certain pace for him to stay
Would
on
you
the court.
would you say he's Enos Cantor like?
A little bit, a little bit. But like being half Chinese, obviously the Yao comparisons are there, not
Yep.
anywhere near as skilled as Yao was, but he's 7'4", 7'5". I'm interested to see him and Klingon actually standing
Yeah.
next to each other because Klingon's listed, I think, at 7'1", maybe 7'2". Just to see like can Edie go up against a premier big man like Klingon and actually make a difference? Because that's what it's going to come down to in the NBA, where he's going to go up against Brooke Lopez's of the world and
Right.
people like that are pretty much the same size as him. So is he going to be able to still drop his left shoulder and do his right-handed hook shot against the
Right.
best in the world? Or can he only do it against college
Six
teams that
six.
that are 6'6", 6'7", right? So I'm really interested to see him versus Klingon. I have a feeling Klingon's gonna play him off the court.
Yeah, and I also just think UConn's a better team. Like UConn has 2 guys along with Klingon. They have another guard, Stephen Castle, who played a great game the other night. That's also supposed to be a lottery pick. So they also have just, I think, a better team
Oh,
overall.
dude, that point guard for Purdue looked like dog shit in the
Yeah.
last game. The little white dude,
hmm
he
Yeah, I
looked
mean
awful. But
Purdue. I haven't been overly impressed with Purdue. I mean, they just dominated on the boards because NC State in the Final Four game was so locked in on trying to get Edie off the boards that they just crashed the boards with everyone else, and they got a ton of offensive
right.
rebounds. Like, yeah, I haven't found Purdue to be overwhelmingly impressive. I have found UConn to be pretty impressive with what they have. I just think they have 2 NBA level talent guys. Another guy that I think his name's Carabin that can shoot and might be kind of a
Mhm.
fringe NBA
Yeah.
guy. And then they just got guys that make sense around them as well. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I would expect UConn probably wins this game by at least 8 to 10 points would be my guess.
Yeah, and I want to be fair to when we were making the comparisons with the women's game, and I said that one girl, like you could tell she didn't really belong on the court. Like that's how
hmm
I felt about the point guard for Purdue. Like it's not just
Yeah.
like a women's thing, like it's just like a player thing where like he looked overmatched in that last matchup where he had a couple turnovers, like backcourt violations at half court, just like completely like they're to put it the smallest amount of pressure with an athletic guard, and this like little 5'10" white point guard just like freaked out and just dribbled off his foot twice and like
Yeah, he had
backcourt
two
violations.
backcourt violations in the
Yeah,
first, like, 6 minutes of the game or
yeah.
whatever it
And
was.
then I think he had like 5 turnovers in the first half. I wasn't as locked into the second half, so I'm not quite sure that if he continued to play like shit in the second half, but I was not impressed with that dude. The broadcasters made it sound like he just had an off game, and anybody can have a
Mhm,
off game and get
for sure.
rattled. So, but just judging off of what I saw, that dude, I feel like against UConn, he's just gonna shit the bed, and he's gonna realize like there are levels to the shit, and there's no way he's ever gonna make it to the NBA. Like if that kid has a dream of making it to the NBA, like it's dying in this Final Four.
Yeah, or maybe he turns it all around Monday night. We'll see. We'll
Maybe.
see.
Maybe.
Never know. But yeah, we'll talk more about that later this week. UConn, Purdue, that's Monday night NCAA championship. If we have any thoughts on that, we'll get to that later in the week here. But just to wrap this pod up here for the Celtics this upcoming week, it's the final week of the regular season. Of course, it's also the farewell tour to Mike Gorman. Mike, hope you're resting that voice to make sure we get you through the final week of your career here. Before the Celtics, it's Tuesday night at Milwaukee. Thursday night, home to the Knicks. Friday night, home to the Hornets, and then they wrap up their season Sunday, Mike Gorman Day at the TD Garden against the Wizards. So we'll definitely have to come up with some type of Mike Gorman tribute segment later this week. Definitely got to send our guy out here. But 4 more games for the Celtics here before we wrap it up, call it a regular season, and look ahead to the play-in. Any final thoughts here before we wrap it up, Greg?
Who you got in the men's final? UConn?
Yeah, UConn by 8 to 10. I think
Okay.
it's going to be UConn pretty easily.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I got nothing.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Green with Envy. We appreciate you guys for checking in with us. Like I said, one more week. keep locked in. Make sure you're following us on our YouTube page. Make sure that you guys are following us across all of our social medias. And of course, jump into the Discord. We'd love to mix it up with everybody in the Discord and get thoughts and opinions. Bring them onto the show here. So if you want to have a say of what we talk about, you want to hear us talk about some more topics, you want to change it up a little bit, jump in the Discord. Let us know what you think. And we will catch you guys later this week. 4 more games to go. Catch y'all later. Peace.
Every time I get this high, I lose my mind. It don't take much no more until I hit the floor. Every time I get this high, it's you I find. It don't take much no more until I'm at your door.
You cut me to my core, baby. What can I say? You got me on the floor, you know I came to play. I know I shouldn't, but you seem to take my pain away. And every time I score, Jason Tatum fade away. I close my eyes and I'm floating in your river. I call to see if you open, you know I hope you deliver. Every time you're getting close, I still be sick.